From 2007 until 2017, there were 5 live-action Transformers movies, and the 5 movies were almost universally disliked or actively hated on by the vast majority of fans and critics. Most review scores on most film sites are abysmal, and with good reason, because there's multiple, very valid reasons as to why most people hated these movies. It could be the awful scripts, awful dialogue, and plotting. It could be Michael Bay's frenetic directing style and the over-reliance on CGI. It could also be the awful stereotypes.
Old school, yo. That's like...
But personally, in my case at least, what I've always hated the most in these movies are the goddamn human characters. My god, I hate Sam Witwicky. I hate his parents. Not even the amazingly talented John Turturro had a good character in these movies. I even found him annoying. And they actually thought that bringing in Mark Wahlberg would be an improvement. It wasn't. It really wasn't. To be fair though, for years it's been a pretty common complaint that humans in Transformers stories, in general, just suck. There's a few human characters here and there that were pretty good, like the girl in Bumblebee or the kids in Transformers Prime. But even then, I don't remember a single thing about these characters if I'm being completely honest. Not even their names. And they weren't memorable beyond being just fine. When it comes to pretty much all the other human characters in Transformers movies and TV shows though, they suck. For the most part, they suck. They detract screen time from the Transformers, who are the characters that the audience actually wants to see. And even worse, they are pretty much useless, because they can never actively participate in the main plot without it being really contrived, like Sam Witwicky, for example, being a chosen one of sorts, just because his grandfather encountered a frozen Megatron.
Megatron crash-landed before he could retrieve the cube.
You know what could be cool though? Since they always insist on having human characters share protagonism with the Transformers, how about they finally make a crossover with the GI Joe franchise? It would be a lot more convincing to have a group of paramilitary soldiers with special advanced weapons interacting with a race of robotic aliens than to have some random civilians getting involved with all these dangerous situations. Besides, the Joes have a lot of different personalities, which would add a lot of variety into the movie. We could also get to see the Decepticons teaming up with Cobra. And in the crossovers we've seen in the comics, for example, they've done some cool ideas, like having the Decepticons transform into Cobra battle vehicles, which would be a cool concept that uses elements of both franchises in a fun way. Now, admittedly, the few live-action GI Joe movies we've seen so far haven't really done a good job in portraying the different personalities that the GI Joes have. And I believe that introducing new rebooted versions of these characters in a Transformers crossover would be a good way of rectifying this issue. I genuinely believe they should go straight into making a Transformers and GI Joes crossover movie, rather than introducing the GI Joes in a solo reboot movie first and then making a crossover. This is one of the few instances where I believe it makes more sense to introduce a new version of a property directly in a crossover movie first and then make spin-offs. Because if we're being honest, most young people and general audiences nowadays don't really know GI Joe like that. It's not that much of a recognizable franchise anymore. It's nowhere near the Transformers franchise in terms of recognizability, and I say this as a GI Joe fan. I've enjoyed the comics and the animated series, like the original one and Resolute, and I even enjoyed the second live-action movie. But people just aren't interested in GI Joe anymore. They have to be given a reason why they should be interested. In a situation like this, I believe the smart thing to do would be to reintroduce the GI Joe franchise in a world that most people are already familiar with and interested in, and the Transformers world would be perfect for that. They could reintroduce a new version of the GI Joes in a Transformers team-up movie, get people interested in them, and then, if the film ends up being successful, they can spin them off into their own film series with an already established modern audience that are aware and invested in the GI Joes. Besides, it would be kinda sad if this age of cinematic universes comes and goes without us ever seeing the crossover between two of the most iconic 80s franchises. two franchises which already have years of established team-ups and crossovers in the comics to draw inspiration from. Like I said, there were comics where the Decepticons transform into Cobra vehicles and they team up with a terrorist organization. There was a comic where the GI Joes team up with the Autobots in World War II. There's just a lot of cool ideas that they could do. And then if it were up to me, I'd fully and unashamedly lean into the 80s angle heavy with this potential film. Just have it literally be like a 2-hour crossover episode between the 80s cartoons, filled with personality and vibrant colors, faithful designs and costumes, all of it, man. I'd love for them to not take these franchises so seriously and have fun with the more outlandish elements. The animated and comic book designs of these characters could really pop visually if they were translated well into live action. Hell, I'd even like to see laser guns, insane weapons and gadgets, with outrageous comic book action, like the Kingsman movies for example, but maybe with less blood and violence. I also really loved the scene from the Bumblebee movie set in Cybertron where we get to see the Transformers and their classic fantastic G1 designs. That's easily my favorite part of the movie, and if we got to see the same thing for the GI Joe characters with a faithful visual depiction of their 80s look, it would be insane. So yeah, a Transformers/GI Joe movie is something that's been teased for years, almost a decade really, but there's never been an actual official announcement or anything real, even though the idea could be really successful in my opinion. But I want to know from you guys, would you also like to see this live action crossover happen one day? Are you planning on seeing Rise of the Beasts? I personally really like Bumblebee, so I'm really interested in seeing where they take this new chapter of Transformers movies. Let me know in the comments what you think, and let me know what you think they should do with the GI Joe movies, and why is the Snake Eyes movie so bad that it physically hurts?